Why is finding the truth and the facts so hard these days? Why is it so hard to know who to even trust anymore? We've all heard it, right? The media lies. And maybe you've already accepted that, but you're just not sure how to then take the next step and find the truth or to know what is the truth. Because the reality is, the truth and the facts seem to shift depending on who you're listening to and whatever their bias is. And when you realize that entire networks can have a bias, it's even harder to know where to turn. And now we're in a new wave. Podcasters, TikTokers, independent journalists, all shaping what we see and hear every day, and only adding to the voice of influence available to us, which is great, but also maybe bad. But I'll get to that later. And the media doesn't just come from the top down anymore. It's in your pocket, it's on your feed, it's in your inbox, it's everywhere. But with this explosion of content comes a new set of questions. Who's credible and how do you even decipher that? And how do you know what's fact or fake news? And how do you stay grounded and balanced when from all angles your emotions are constantly being tugged on? That's where media literacy comes in. Media literacy is a muscle, and when you practice it, it only gets stronger. It's one of the main things that will allow you to separate yourself from what you're seeing and taking in, and give yourself permission to not pick a side yet without first getting more information. It's what keeps you curious rather than reactive. It's what keeps your head clear and your feet on the ground. The only way these media lies can truly influence you is when your nervous system is frozen in a place of heightened emotion. In this video, I'm going to break down why the old definition of media literacy no longer cuts it, but what we can learn from it, how our media landscape is continuing to evolve, and what tools you need to stay clear headed and aware in a system that runs on emotion, speed, and visibility. But before we get into what you should be doing now, we need to understand where this all started. The media landscape is evolving fast between independent journalists, podcasters, influencers, and the legacy outlets all competing for your attention. And if we want to learn how to navigate it, we have to understand where the idea of media literacy even came from in the first place. It started when mass media first became a part of daily life. Radio, television, and advertising. Suddenly, the public wasn't just getting information from schools, books, and newspapers. They were getting it from screens and airwaves. To define it for you and to really let it sink in, media literacy means the ability to critically analyze stories presented in the mass media and to determine their accuracy or credibility. And this is where we meet Marshall McLuhan. You might say Marshall McLuhan is the godfather of media literacy. He was one of the first thinkers to really zoom out and ask, how is media not just informing us, but shaping us? In 1964, McLuhan coined the expression, the medium is the message, and the term global village, and even predicted the World Wide Web almost 30 years before it was invented. I know, crazy, right? And maybe you've heard the medium is the message before, if only in passing, as it shows up here in Mad Men as a nod to McLuhan.
They were very specific about it. Oh, well, you know what they say. The medium is the message.
So what does the medium is the message mean? It essentially means the form something takes, like getting your news from a news article versus a TikTok, changes how we experience the content itself. It's not just about what the story is, it's about how it's delivered on which medium. In his time, this was about the rise of television. TV changed the pace of storytelling. It added sound, image, and immediacy. It turned news into theater, ripe with emotional triggers. And McLuhan saw that this shift wasn't just cosmetic, it was cognitive. He argued that media formats alter our attention, our interpretation, and even our values. Fast forward to now, and that prediction is even more accurate. Because today, our dominant mediums aren't newspapers or radio, and not really even just TV anymore. They're social media platforms driven by the algorithm and built to surface what gets the most reaction. Media isn't something you consume at select times anymore. It's something you actually live inside of. You don't wait for the 6 o'clock news anymore. Instead, you get breaking news stories on your lock screen. And you don't even search for information. Instead, it's delivered to you. And here's the thing, that delivery system doesn't prioritize accuracy. It prioritizes engagement. So today's media literacy has to go deeper. It's not just about knowing what's true. It's about recognizing why you're seeing this story now in this way with this emotional tone and so on. And really be able to break that apart and see all the individual pieces at play. Think of media like an onion. I know that sounds funny, but stick with me because I'm going somewhere with this. There's the surface, right? The headline, the image, the story. But underneath that are layers, emotional tone, timing, context, omission. And if you don't peel those back, you're only ever reacting to what's on the surface. Because at this point, it's not just about spotting fake news. It's about learning how to spot emotional spin, subtle bias, and the quiet ways your perception are being shaped, even when you don't realize it's happening. So here's a great place to start. These are 5 skills to develop media literacy for today. Number 1, emotional manipulation. One of the most important skills to develop is learning how to recognize when a piece of media is trying to stir up your emotions, especially before giving you the full context. Because the more emotionally triggered you are, the less likely you are to pause and think critically. Here's an example. Do you remember in 2020 when that clip of George Floyd went viral? Do you remember the protests and riots that followed, the destruction of property, the social unrest, and the global and nationwide movement that erupted afterwards? That was a powerful example of how a short emotional video clip could mobilize millions of people to take action. But the only problem is there was a lot missing from that clip. Context that could have told a very different story, or at the very least, a more nuanced story than what mainstream outlets were showing. Which brings me to number 2, omission, or what's left out of the story. Sometimes the most powerful manipulation doesn't come from what's said, it comes from what's left out. Let's go back to the George Floyd example. Sometime later, the public finally gained access to the police body cam footage that showed what happened in the moments leading up to that viral video. It included critical context that wasn't part of the initial narrative, the interaction between Floyd and the officers before the restraint, the officers' communication, and other details that complicated the story many people had already accepted as fact. That's omission. And it happens all the time in viral clips, headlines, and quotes that are designed to spark a reaction before they offer a full picture. So the next time you see a viral clip accompanied by a story, ask yourself, what might I not be seeing here? Or what happened before this moment that might have led to this? The truth is, even if you have facts in front of you, the way those facts are presented can still pull you in a very specific direction. And that brings us to number 3, framing. The media doesn't just report the news, it frames the news. And the frame determines what we focus on. The best way to explain this is with a simple example. Let's take a look at these 2 headlines. Reuters runs a headline that says, U.S. military to remove 2,000 National Guard troops from Los Angeles. This framing invites you to interpret the situation rationally as a logistical policy response rather than an emotional confrontation. But Politico runs, Mayor Bass calls for the end to ICE reign of terror in Los Angeles. This framing uses highly charged phrasing, reign of terror, and positions the military presence as intimidating and authoritarian, steering you toward an emotional response rooted in fear and injustice. Same story, but wildly different takeaways depending on how it's framed. Now, that's only touching the surface of framing without even going further into how it shows up in the reporting itself. If you want me to do a deep dive into that, drop a comment and let me know. Otherwise, let's move to number 4. Algorithm awareness. This one's crucial because what shows up in your feed is not an accurate reflection of the world. It's a reflection of what holds your attention. And the algorithm knows that outrage and division keeps you glued to your screen. Let me show you how this plays out. Say you pause on a video about a political issue, then suddenly your feed is full of that same viewpoint. Then you start thinking, wow, everyone else feels this way. But that may not be the case. It's just that the algorithm is programmed to show you more of that viewpoint. That's why it's so important to actively seek out different sources and viewpoints on purpose. I always say break your algorithm by actively seeking out opposing viewpoints, opinions, and news sources. This will diversify your feed, ideally, and give you perspectives from across the board. And last but not least, number 5, visual and audio literacy. Words aren't the only thing that shape how we see something and what meaning we draw from it. Music, color, lighting, camera angles, these all send messages too. It's something I'll be digging into more on this channel, by the way. For decades, Hollywood and filmmakers have mastered techniques that speak directly to our emotions and our subconscious. We react to those cues instinctively, even when we don't realize it. Your brain realizes it. It picks up on every emotional signal, even the ones you don't consciously notice. From the way something is edited to the music added in the background to the camera angle being used, it all plays a huge role in perception and what you believe to be happening or not happening. So, collectively, these five skills are a great starting point to help you step back, zoom out, and think critically before getting swept up by emotion. Now, do you remember the intro of the video when I said that all of the new media voices available to us now is great, but also possibly bad? Here's what I meant. Going back to Marshall McLuhan, he believed media would bring us closer together. He called this the global village, a world where we'd all be more connected, more informed, more aware of each other's realities. And in a lot of ways, that's true, right? Even more so now that we have the internet and smartphones. We can see events happening across the world in real time. We can talk to strangers halfway across the globe. But somehow we also see a lot more division, which is a downside that McLuhan predicted as well. When he said back in the 1960s, the global village makes maximum disagreement and creative dialogue inevitable. Uniformity and tranquility are not hallmarks of the global village. Far more likely are conflict and discord. And we're living exactly that, aren't we? Fragmented realities, echo chambers, divisions within culture, communities, and even families. With the rise of the internet and smartphones and therefore social media platforms, we're each individually now living within the world of our own feed, which is essentially a curated stream of content that mirrors our preferences, fears, and beliefs. So the idea of how television gave rise to the global village now has evolved to become a set of silos or echo chambers, in a lot of ways isolating us more than connecting us. And now with the rise of AI, we're only seeing this evolve more and more. That's why media literacy today isn't just about being sharp and tuned in. It's also about being open-minded, emotionally regulated, and consciously aware. So if you've been feeling like it's harder than ever to know what's real, what matters, or even what to pay attention to, you're not wrong. The rules have changed. But that's why I created this channel to talk about these things. So if you want to keep sharpening how you see, interpret, and navigate media, then hit subscribe or drop me a comment and let me know what you want me to dive into next. Until next time, stay curious and stay grounded.